On today's show, the Cavs wrap up the month of March with a nice win over the LA Clippers. Plus, it's the time to start ramping up for the postseason, and we are going to discuss Jarrett Allen's Cats on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham, and you might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, 92.3 The Fan, and a number of other stops along the way. I want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor before we get started here. Hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. A proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA. That is LOCKEDON NBA for $20 off your first purchase. The Cleveland Cavaliers beat the LA Clippers on Sunday, 127-122. And I thought that this was a really good sign from this team. This is the end of a really difficult stretch in the schedule. If you listen to the show every day, you know where I stand on this, that I think that the schedule has had a really big impact on how the Cavs have played lately. They don't want to use that as an excuse, but I do think that they've admitted that it's at least part of the equation. It's not the whole thing, but it's part of the thing. And I thought on Sunday, they looked like a team that was much more focused than they've been in a lot of the games that they've played this month. I thought that they competed at a higher level than they had in some of the other games that they've played this month. I thought that this was one of the more complete games that the Cavs have played this month. And truthfully, the only reason I thought this game was as close as it was is, one, the Cavs did a poor job of closing out quarters in this game, which has been a bit of a recurring theme for them. And two, give credit where it's due. I thought Norm Powell for the Clippers was absolutely fantastic in this game. And I thought Chris Dunn, who the Cavs were more than content to leave wide open, hit a few shots. And that is why that this game was a 5-point Cavs win instead of a 15 to 20 point Cavs win. But ultimately, I thought we saw a lot of really good things from the Cavs today. I thought Donovan Mitchell was fantastic. I thought Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley both really stepped up after what happened when the Cavs played the Clippers in LA a couple of weeks ago. And this is a really nice win. The Clippers, yes, Kawhi Leonard didn't play. And of course, that factors into this a little bit. But overall, the Clippers have been playing great basketball lately. And the Cavs, I thought, probably toyed with them a little bit too much, where they led by as many as 18 early. They'd let LA back into the game. They led by, I believe it was 14 or 15 or 16, somewhere in that neighborhood in the second half, and they let LA back in the game. They failed to close the door completely as early as they could have in this game. But overall, I think there's a lot to be happy about. And I think a lot of that has to do with what the Cavs looked like offensively in this game, because I think at times during this stretch of below standard basketball, I think is a fair thing to say, where the Cavs have not played up to their standards. I think during this stretch, one of the things that has suffered a little bit has been the ball movement, where the ball maybe hasn't moved side to side as much, or the Cavs haven't generated great shots through the flow of the offense, a lot of what they can do. And, I think this is a common thing that's not a Cavs specific thing. But I do think when teams are at their best, the ball is moving. And when teams are at their worst, the ball can get kind of sticky. And I thought that this was sort of a pretty good example of what happened on Friday night in Detroit against the Pistons, where the Cavs tied their season low in assists with 16. And then on Sunday against the Clippers, a team that I think is probably better than Detroit, the Cavs go out and have 33 assists and just look so much better offensively. They had 33 assists on 47 made baskets. Like, that is absolutely a good place to be. They didn't shoot the basketball from 3-point range as well as you would expect them to. They were 33% there, which is below what their average is. And they've not been a good shooting team in the month of March. But I also think that serves as a reminder in a game like this, where the Cavs look pretty good, but they were not clicking on all cylinders. Like, this was so far away from what the peak version of the Cavs is. but the non-peak version of the Cavs is still more than good enough to beat almost every team in the league. Like, could they beat Boston in a 7-game series playing the way they did on Sunday? No. Could they beat OKC playing the way they did on Sunday? No. But can they beat just about every other team in the NBA playing the way they did on Sunday? Yes, they can, because that's how good the Cavs are. And I don't think that this is anything close to what we're going to see in the postseason, but I think what we are at now, and this was a big talking point after the game, is now it's time to go. And the Cavs, I don't want to say they screwed around during the month of March, because that's not true. Did they have the same level of focus that is needed for the postseason? No. Did they execute as well as they will need to execute when the postseason arrives during this month? No. Was this their worst month of the season? Probably. Is that okay? Yes. But now is when I think we start to see that page get turned a little bit, to where now that just brutal month of March, where they have had, I think this is 18 games in a row, the end of an 18-game stretch where they don't have back-to-back games in a single city, Cleveland or otherwise. And now they're going to be rested. They have a couple of days off. Going to talk about coming up in a little bit exactly what that could mean for this team. For the first time in a while, they have a couple of days off. And now I think is when that focus is going to really start to ramp up and lock in. And that's not to say they're going to have it in all 7 of the remaining games, because I don't think that's going to be expected. I think they will, before the end of the regular season, I think they will clinch the top seed in the Eastern Conference. I mean, would it shock me if they, because now their magic number is down to 4, a combination of 4 wins and Boston losses will give them the number 1 seed. Would it shock me if the Cavs win their next 4 games against the New York Knicks, San Antonio Spurs, Sacramento Kings, and Chicago Bulls and clinch the top seed in the East? No, that would not be a stunning thing to me. And then once that happens, I don't want to say that they're going to take their foot off the gas, but I think that you probably see Donovan Mitchell get another rest game, Darius Garland get another rest game, Evan Mobley, Jarrett Allen's the only one that's not going to do that because he wants to play in all 82. So I think we'll get to that point. But until then, I think you're going to see a very locked-in version of the Cavs. And I think that what we're going to start to see from this team is a little bit more of okay, the playoffs are here. It's time to focus up. It's time to go. It's not that they haven't necessarily felt urgency lately, but I do think that a game like Sunday kind of reinforces what I've been saying on this podcast lately, is that there was no reason to panic because they played a bad stretch of basketball. These things happen. And Donovan Mitchell talked about this after the game. And I do want to talk specifically about the game that he had, because I think it was a very, very impressive, complete performance from him in this one on Sunday. But he talked after the game about a little bit about the circumstances that led to this, that the focus level maybe wasn't where it needed to be. And that, Kenny Atkinson told them before this game, kind of, I don't want to say snapped on them, but he maybe lit into them is the right way to go about this, and got the message across that it's time to focus up, that it's time to start taking this a little bit maybe more seriously than this month has been. And it's time to really start getting ready for a deep postseason run. And I do think one of the keys to making a deep postseason run is taking care of your business. And I think that now we're going to start to see the Cavs take care of their business. And I do think that, maybe this month that we just went through is going to get a little bit overblown, where ultimately the Cavs didn't finish March with some bad record. They didn't play to their full potential, and they had a 4-game losing streak in there. But ultimately, they lost 5 games in a month. Like, that's not a big deal in the big scheme of things. And the other thing that Donovan mentioned, and I think some of this has merit, is that if they would have had, say, if you would have changed the name of this month from March to November, it wouldn't have been a big deal. I think people would have been happy that the Cavs would have gone 11-5 in a month, which they just did, or 12-5, whatever their final record was. But because it's March, because it's close to the playoffs, I do think that there is a sense of, from some of the fan base, a little bit of a freak out. And I understand why, because you want the team to be playing its best basketball when it matters most. And I think that they are going to show moving forward here that they are ready for the postseason, that's what these next few games are going to serve as. They are truly going to serve as the Cavs getting ready for the postseason in a different way than what we have seen before. It's not to say that they're going to play their best basketball every night, because I just don't think that that's necessarily a possible thing. But I think that they're going to look, one, I think they're going to look like a different team on Wednesday night when they play the New York Knicks. That's the next game they have. I think they're going to look like a different team then. I think they're going to look like a much more focused group, probably even more focused than they did on Sunday against the Clippers. And I do think that this was the most focused they've looked probably since the game they played against Memphis. I think they're going to look like a well-rested team. I think the shooting is going to come back for them. Like, that is the thing that even as they've looked good in some of these games, as they did on Sunday against the Clippers, as they did in Portland, I guess Utah, like Utah's just so bad that it doesn't matter. But like the 3-point shooting has not necessarily been the driver of their offensive success. They've been getting it done in other ways. And as I think they're going to get their legs back underneath them a little bit here, I think that is going to be a bigger, more significant part of the equation than what it has been during this stretch. Like, they are a team that entered the month of March shooting around 39% from three. Exiting in the month of March, they're not anywhere near that. Like, they were a poor shooting team by their standards during this month. That is something that I do expect to change. I think Sunday is, and I've made mention a ton about what day, February 10th, because that was the day that DeAndre Hunter made his team debut for the Cavs, and they looked really good for a stretch after that. And then I don't know if you want to call it taking your foot off the gas or easing up or whatever, but they were not the team that we have seen all season for the last several weeks. And I think there are a variety of reasons as to why. But I think that we are going to look at Sunday, March 30th and say, okay, that's the day where maybe flipping the switch isn't the proper word. But I think that's going to be the day we look at and say, okay, the Cavs are okay. They're fine. What happened in March stays in March. They're going to be all right. They're going to turn the page, and the focus and everything that needs to be there for the postseason is going to be there for the postseason. I think that this is the game we're going to look at it, because the Cavs played well enough. They toyed with a really good team. They only won by 5, but I don't think that even begins to tell just how dominant they were in this game against, yes, Kawhi Leonard didn't play, but the rest of that Clippers team is pretty good. And for Norm Powell to have the game that he had, and that really be the only reason it was close. Like, I thought the Cavs did a great job on James Harden. I thought overall they did a great job in a lot of areas. And I think that is going to serve as a bit of a preview for what to expect moving forward. Now, I do want to get into some of the specifics from this game. I thought Donovan Mitchell was absolutely fantastic. Thought Jarrett Allen was too. And Evan Mobley just continues to make a case to be the defensive player of the year. So we're going to talk about all of that stuff and probably a little bit more coming up next right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you like Game Time. There's nothing like watching basketball live. I got to do it twice this weekend. Went to Detroit once to watch the Cavs, and of course Sunday as they played a home game, got to do it then too. The energy of the crowd was great. Both. I actually think, I think there were a lot of people that went to Detroit that used Game Time. I know there was one person that came up to me at a recent home game, and he was like, hey, I think I'm going to go to Detroit. Where should I get tickets? I'm like, you got to go to Game Time, man. Like, Game Time is going to have the best possible seats. They're going to have the best deal. You're going to get the best experience if you use Game Time. I saw that person on Sunday. He goes, hey, man, use Game Time. Went to the game. Cavs didn't win, but I had a great time, and Game Time was a big reason why. I'm like, I told you, man. Told you it would be great. He also told me, he used code Locked On NBA and got $20 off his first purchase. And you can do the same thing, because I know as March ends and April arrives, you're going to want to go watch basketball live. And with Game Time, you can do that. And you can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with the new feature Game Time Picks as well. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA. This LOCKEDON NBA for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms to apply. Create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And make sure you're also subscribed to Locked On Cavs daily newsletter, your one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. You can sign up for free right now at lockedondaily.com. That is lockedondaily.com, and start your day with the all new free Locked On Cavs daily newsletter. So I thought that Donovan Mitchell was the best player on the floor for the Cavs in this game. And I know that he didn't necessarily finish. I mean, maybe he did, I guess. But Jarrett Allen was awesome too. Jarrett finished with 25 points and 12 rebounds. And that is like the best thing on the box score, I guess. And Donovan had 24 points, but he also had 12 rebounds, had 7 assists. Like I thought that this was, and he also had 4 steals too. I thought that this was one of the most complete games Donovan has played all year. Kenny Atkinson went as far to say as it was the best game that Donovan has played all year. I'm not so sure that I'm all the way there on it, but I did think it was a really impressive thing. The rebounding was awesome. And if you think back to what happened the last time the Cavs played the Clippers, Ivica Zubac had 20 plus rebounds. The Cavs were out rebounded in that game, and that is why they lost. And that has been one of the things that has really plagued them lately. So in that game against the Clippers, the Cavs were out rebounded 49-29 when they played in LA a couple of weeks ago. And then fast forward to Sunday, the Cavs out rebounded the Clippers 45-44. And there are a number of different things that factor into that, certainly. But the Cavs, the way the Cavs are constructed, and this is very true in certain lineups, more so than others, but they need a little bit more help rebounding because Jarrett Allen's a good rebounder. Evan Mobley's a good rebounder, but they just don't have a ton of great rebounders on the wing. I think Max Strus is, for his size, a pretty good rebounder. But to know what they went through the last time they saw the Clippers in terms of the rebounding, it was important to get help from the guards. And Donovan really, really did a great job. Like that was very clearly a point of emphasis for him. If you watch this game, like you could say, okay, like Donovan knows he has to go out and get rebounds for this team. So he did that. His assist total was only 7, but I continue to come away very, very impressed with what he's doing from a playmaking perspective lately. Like, I really do think that, he had 14 assists the other night against the Spurs. He could have had 14 assists in this game. Like, there was one that he had to Dean Wade that was a great pass. There's another one to Isaac Okoro that was a great pass. One to Sam Merrill. Like, this is a game that I do think it's a little, unfortunate that the rest of the Cavs didn't make a few more shots, because this was absolutely deserving of being the first ever triple-double for Donovan Mitchell. Like this, that's how well I thought he played in this game. He just really does seem lately to be in complete control. And, I think that we're getting to the point where whatever groin issue he was dealing with a little bit earlier, it seems like he's past that. Like, he looks like Donovan Mitchell. He looks like a guy that is, without a doubt, getting ready to, he's ramping up for the postseason. You can start to see it. And I do think it was a good thing too, that he played over 36 minutes in this game. And that's one of the things Kenny talked about after the game, is that, the starting group at the start of the third quarter was going well, and he left them in there a little bit longer than he normally does. So Donovan played 36 minutes. Evan Mobley played 36 minutes. Darius Garland played 32 minutes. Jarrett Allen played 31. And those minute totals are a little bit higher than what they average. And I do think that we're starting to see that ramp up just a little bit. But Kenny mentioned, as far as that starting group staying in there a little bit longer, if this were earlier in the season, that's not something he would have done. Like, he would have stuck to the way that he plans things out. And, at certain times, as if you watch basketball, certain times guys check out for other players, and just like, that's how Kenny plans out the rotations ahead of time. He's not just, it's not coincidental that the same guys in DeAndre Hunter and Ty Jerome, who did not play because of a knee injury, check in first for the Cavs. Like, it's not coincidental that happens every game. And then Sam Merrill checks in after that, and then Dean Wade, and then Isaac Okoro. Like, this is all planned out before the game. And then the fourth quarter is when you start to see things go according to how the game is flowing. But Kenny deviated from that plan on Sunday because he wanted to treat this like it was a postseason game to an extent. And of course, I don't think it was entirely that, but I do think that there were some things that looked like that. I thought Donovan Mitchell was one of those things. I thought the rotations were one of those things. I thought the way that the Cavs rebounded and defended certainly qualifies as such. Like Max Strus's box score is not good. He had 3 points and 1 of 4 shooting, did have 6 assists, but I thought he played a great game because he had the task of defending James Harden, who I thought had a pretty awful game. Harden had 24 points on 7 of 18 shooting, 4 of 12 from deep, did have 8 rebounds, had 8 assists, but he was a team worse for the Clippers, minus 17. Like, I thought that Harden looked terrible, and I think Max Strus had a lot to do with that. So I think that those are all things to really, really like about this game. I think Jarrett Allen's another one too, because you go back and watch what happened when the Clippers played the Cavs 2 weeks ago. And I mentioned the rebounding total already. I don't need to rehash that, but both he and Evan Mobley, I don't want to say got bullied, but I mean, Ivica Zubac significantly outplayed them in that game. And it's not that Zubac was bad. I mean, he had 14 and 13 in this game for the Clippers in 36 minutes, but I think that Allen and Mobley really took that not as an insult, but as a challenge, as okay, this guy got us last time. We got to get him today. And that's what they did. I thought Evan was really good. The fact that he hit 3 threes, I think is a great sign. He had 3 blocks. I thought he was really good defensively in this one too, but Jarrett Allen, 25 points, 12 rebounds. Like, can you expect that in the playoffs? I don't know, but he was fantastic. And this is a lot of what a playoff game, what the structure of a playoff game should and will look like for the Cavs. Now, the intensity level, probably not exactly where it would be for a postseason game, but man, it's hard to look at what happened on Sunday and I think not feel better about the Cavs, because this is a team that has been preaching lately that they are not panicking, that they're not worried about it, that things are going to get better. I asked Donovan Mitchell, I asked Darius Garland, those things in the locker room after the game against the Pistons on Friday night. And Donovan in particular was adamant that things are going to get better. They are going to get better. They will figure this out. And does one game quell all of that? Probably not. But I think considering it was against a good team, it still qualifies as the third game in 4 days for them. I think this should go this should go a ways in saying, okay, what happened in March is not nearly as big of a deal as maybe it felt like at times. That this team is going to be fine for the postseason. They've been telling us they're going to be fine for the postseason. They've racked up 60 wins. Maybe we should believe them. I think that this is just kind of a statement that says that when Donovan Mitchell says something like what he said on Friday and then backs it up with the game that he played on Sunday, I think there's a lot of reason to believe what these guys say and kind of trust in the process that the Cavs are going through. March wasn't fun for them. I know it wasn't fun for fans. I get it. I totally get it. But it wasn't worth panicking over. And I think Sunday is just another point of proof of that. Sunday was the team's 60th win of the season. That has only happened a couple of other times in franchise history. It puts the team in rarefied air. We're going to talk about that a little bit. Plus, we're talking about Jarrett Allen's t-shirt. We have to talk about it. We're going to do that next right here on Locked On Cavs. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. For watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. And the Cavs won their 60th game on Sunday. They are 60-15 on the season. If they win the rest of their remaining games on the schedule, they will break the franchise record for wins. I wouldn't necessarily anticipate that happening, but there are 7 games left. Could they finish the year on an 8-game winning streak? That would only qualify as the team's 4th longest winning streak of the year. So anything is certainly possible. But considering where the Cavs were last year, and they were a good team, they were not a great team. Of course, this is a very similar roster at this point to what that roster was at this time last year. Not entirely the same because of the trade they made for DeAndre Hunter, but a very similar roster. That team, despite some injuries, won 48 games. but even when they were fully healthy, that just sort of felt like a 50-win team. It didn't feel like a team that was special. It felt like a team that was good, but not great, that had some great pieces, but didn't necessarily always maximize those pieces. And this team has been very different from that, because it does feel like this is a group that is being maximized. And of course, I do think that year over year, they're better. And a big part of that has to do with the fact that Evan Mobley is not only healthy, but also that he's just a much better basketball player than he was at this time last year. And I think that is something that matters in context here. But to go from where they were last year at 48 wins to where they are this year, with now joining the only 2008, 2009, and 2009, 2010 Cleveland Cavaliers, is the only three teams in franchise history to win 60 games. I think it's a really special accomplishment for them. And I asked Kenny Atkinson after the game about, what did you expect this team to look like during the regular season, while realizing that, there are 7 games left to play, and Kenny Atkinson didn't come to Cleveland to win regular season games. He took this job to try and win a championship. And he did not expect them to win this many games. He said, if they improved from last year, if they won 1 more game, 2 more games, whatever it is, that would be something that should be viewed as a success, that's what he was looking for. But he didn't imagine, and nobody in the world imagined a 15-0 start. The most optimistic people about the Cavs have pictured 60 wins? Sure. I didn't. Nobody on that team necessarily did. Kenny Atkinson certainly didn't. This has been such a great success story. And from this point forward, everything is going to be about the playoffs, and everything should be about the playoffs, because the goal for this team is to win the Eastern Conference. It's to win the NBA Finals. That's what the goal for this team is. It's not to finish with 67 wins. It's not to finish with 64 wins. It's that there's not a win total this season that accomplishes their goal. Their goal is to be champions, plain and simple. And they can do that. And that's what the rest of the season is going to be about. That is what generally every episode of this podcast moving forward is going to be about. But I do think that this is probably a pretty good point for some reflection, just because nobody expected this team to be as good as they are, as quickly as they've been this good. And 60 wins is something worth celebrating. It has only happened, as I mentioned, 2 other times in franchise history. It happened in LeBron's final 2 years of his first era in Cleveland. And it's a really difficult thing to do. Winning 60 games is a big challenge. That's why it doesn't happen very often. It doesn't happen every year in the NBA. This year, we're probably going to have 3 teams that win 60 games, and all 3 teams are really, really great. And all 3 teams are teams that most years in NBA history would be considered finals or favorites to win the finals. And obviously only one of those teams can, and it would be a giant surprise, I think, to the rest of the NBA if a team other than the Cavs, Boston, or Oklahoma City won the championship this year. But this is something to enjoy. If you can, and you're a Cavs fan, I think this is something where maybe it's worth just taking a deep breath during these 2 days off and looking at things and say, you know what, this has been a great year. No matter what happens the rest of the way. And of course, those things are going to be interesting and they're going to be more meaningful than this. But no matter what happens the rest of the way, I think that this has been one of the most fun Cavs teams in the history of the franchise. I think it is, considering the lack of off-court drama, I think it is at least the second most fun Cavs team of all time, behind the team that won 66 games in 2008, 2009. I think there's a case to be made that, considering all of these guys are young and it is not just dominated by one player the way that team was with LeBron James, I think there's a very strong case to be made that this is the most fun Cavs team in the regular season of all time. I think there's a very strong case to be made that this Cavs team is the best regular season team in franchise history. Now, they need to go out and prove that in the postseason, because now the magic number, while they have a magic number to clinch home court in the Eastern Conference, and that number is 4, their magic number no longer has anything to do with regular season wins. Their magic number is 16. They need to win 16 postseason games to win the title. That's what the focus is going to be. But a big part of the whole thing is the journey. And I think for this team, I think for this fan base, the journey's been really, really fun. And I think if you don't appreciate that, you might be getting caught up in the wrong things sometimes. It's not the only thing. It's not even the most important thing, but it's been a really, really fun thing. It's been a fun thing to cover. It's been a fun thing to watch from a basketball perspective. It's been awesome. And I just think it's worth appreciating. The other thing I wanted to talk about today. So both Donovan Mitchell and Jarrett Allen had great games. And they were both on the podium afterwards, which the Cavs do sometimes. They don't do always, especially this past month. Like, they're always traveling. And typically when the team travels after the game, they don't send anybody to the podium. They just do all of the media availability in the locker room, which as a media member, I love because things go quicker. And that's ultimately, you don't want to spend a ton of time in there. You want to get in, you want to get your job done, you want to get out. But Jarrett Allen shows up to the podium on Sunday wearing a white t-shirt. His white t-shirt has a photo of himself, with his cats. And at the bottom, it says, "Let him meow." Not "let him know," the Cavs slogan. It says, "Let him meow," with his cats. I thought this was awesome. I fully support Jarrett Allen as a cat dad. If you listen to this podcast every day, you have probably heard one of my cats screaming in the background at some point. So I too am a cat dad, and I fully 100% support Jarrett Allen not only wearing that shirt, but being a cat dad. I think it's a great thing. And I think you're great. If you made Locked On Cavs your first listen today, and if you make it your first listen every day, if you didn't, I only think you're okay. And I think you should make it your first listen tomorrow. But you can find the show anywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching the video on YouTube, do me a favor before we get out of here. Hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. We'll be back tomorrow talking more about the Cavs.